You're listening to a segment from the Slumpbuster Podcast. Find the full episode on Spotify, iTunes, the iHeartRadio app, or your preferred podcast platform. Enjoy.
Something that's been really interesting has been a lot of contract talks recently. So Jorge Masvidal has been one of the guys saying, hey, I need to get paid more. Jon Jones has come out saying, I want to do these big fights. I want to move up to heavyweight, but you got to pay me to do it. And then even Amanda Nunes has come out. Hers isn't so much contract-based, but she's thinking about retirement. Brady, I'll start with you. What do you think about all of these contract talks? Do you think the fighters deserve to get paid more? And what do you think sort of the future is for the UFC?
You know what? You look at it as it's different because Jon Jones came out and said, "I want Deontay Wilder money." The UFC isn't paying enough for their fighters. Most people can agree on that. Does he deserve Deontay Wilder money? To me, Jon Jones is the greatest fighter of all time, but it's a company where a lot of boxing is promoting. It's different business standpoints because the fighters on the lower card most times of boxing are getting pennies, where the main fighter is getting the chunk of the paycheck. Should Jon Jones be paid more? Yes. Will it happen? No, because he's stuck in a contract. And when you're stuck in a contract, there's not really much you can do because he signed the dotted line. And that being said, Jon Jones did sign that contract just a year ago. So I don't know if this is just it's like a scheme he's pulling because it was a year ago. So I really don't know what to think about it.
Yeah, Aris, what are your thoughts?
So I feel like they should get more. The UFC is the only one of the major sports that doesn't have public numbers. We don't really know what people are getting paid contract-wise, whereas we do for NFL and NBA, MLB, NHL, where they even have these big announcements like, hey, Kirk Cousins is getting paid $88 million over 4 years. They don't do that with the UFC. And I know there's been like 2 or 3 guys that have come public with their money. So until we know like how much they're getting paid for these fights, we're really not going to be able to, have conversations if they're paid well enough, paid, overpaid, underpaid, correctly paid for, the slot they're in. And one of the ways they could do that is, we were talking about this earlier, is if they have a union, but there's always going to be somebody willing to fight. So I don't think the fighters are going to be able to strike long enough to actually gain a union to where we can see the public numbers to see if they're paid well or not paid well. But I feel like they can all get their money. Masvidal is getting paid or getting offered half of what he was paid for the BMF belt for the actual title belt. So I feel like that's one issue where, hey, this BS belt over here is worth a lot more to us than an actual belt. Until we can fix those problems, then we could probably get into, hey, let's actually pay these guys the right amount. So it's a long way to go. Fortunately, I don't think they're ever going to get there.
Yeah, Aris, you bring up some really good points about the transparency of other sports versus the UFC because, after the fights, we do get sometimes, hey, here's what Reebok paid out in sponsorships, and then here's some of like what people got paid on the card. So, one, what were you paid by the UFC? Did you get a knockout bonus or whatever? But we really don't see the pay-per-view numbers. And I do find it interesting that between fights, Brady pointed out like, hey, you signed a contract, but it seems like it can fluctuate. And, you pointed out the point of Jorge Masvidal, whereas like how, if he really signed a contract, how is he getting double in his previous fight what he would be getting this fight, and the inconsistency there. And so I don't know if it's clauses within the contracts. Sometimes, hey, if this is just a really, really big fight, we'll up it for you. Maybe Jorge Masvidal had like a title clause, for instance, in his contract. But it would really be interesting if we were able to add some of that transparency. It may help, fighters and their agents do more bargaining by saying like, hey, look, I think my guy is way better than, guy A, B, C over here. So Brady, do you think that there is a way to add more transparency, or do you think that it's just like, hey, that's just the nature of these individual combat sports?
All right. First of all, when Jorge Masvidal fought Nate Diaz, he never main evented a pay-per-view before. So from there, he got paid for pay-per-view points because the pay-per-view was Masvidal versus Diaz, which is a huge success. I don't think it was more the belt. I think he just got the pay-per-view points and he made killing off it, which he didn't get. And let's be honest, he hasn't fought since that fight, I don't think. But that's the reason why he got paid more, is that he was fighting Nate Diaz in the pay-per-view of a main event. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think, the main event draw and the buzz around it. This was the first time that there had ever been an MF belt. And if we're really being honest, right, Masvidal, yeah, he's maybe championship material, but really he had sort of been one of those fighters that had like a cult following, grew up fighting in Kimbo Slice's backyard brawls. And without a doubt, he's definitely become a really good fighter. But you're exactly right in that he never really had that draw before this fight. And now all of that, he's one of the superstars.